Hello, I'm doing a Euro Truck Simulator video, which should be self-evident by the title screen. I'm just staring up at the sunlight streaming through my blinds, and hoping that's not going to blind me too much. I need some light-blocking curtains for that window. Anyway, Euro Truck Simulator, yes. A couple of reasons I wanted to do one of these today. First is I need something to cheer me up, because unfortunately, at the beginning of this week, I was made redundant. Yay. So it's back to looking for jobs, which is always fun and never a soul-crushing thing to have to do. Yeah. It's fine. It's one of those things that we all have to do from time to time. The biggest problem that I have with the situation at the moment is it kind of came a bit out of the blue. We knew the situation was a bit bad where I worked, but we didn't think for a second that it would lead to redundancies. Yes, I know, driver. Tiring, isn't it? So yes, now back on the job market, which ironically is exactly where we are at the moment. So can't remember where I left off. I know. Ooh! Do you know what helps? No, high beams apparently don't help. Okay. We're in the UK, in the game. I mean, I don't want to do too much trauma dumping on this video, but having said that, I do feel like I need to get certain things vocalized, and YouTube is one of my ways of doing that. Yes. So I think the first thing that I've kind of struggled with is when you start looking for work, or should I say when I start looking for work, I go through that whole emotional process of like, oh, I can't do this because I'm not qualified, I'm not good enough, I'm not blah blah blah. A lot of the jobs that I've had in the past I've fallen into. I've not really ever kind of had to utilise any skills to get into. They've all been pretty entry-level jobs, so it's kind of been that level of employment. And when I start looking at the job market and all of these different positions and stuff, it's like imposter syndrome, I suppose. A little bit of that kind of feeling of like, well, I'm not good enough to do any of these things. If I applied for any of these and ended up through some miracle getting the job, people would quickly see that I'm frigging useless. And that emotion has improved in recent sort of months and years. Well, months and the last year, I would say. In so much that I don't necessarily always feel as useless as my first instinct tells me I am. It's difficult to kind of put a lot of the ways that I feel about this into words, because it is a vast kind of like expanse of emotion and noise in my head. Not a lot of it makes a great deal of linguistic sense. So, you know, you feel a certain way, somebody will say, describe how that feels. And it's like that exercise, I don't know if anyone's ever done it, where they've said, like, pretend I'm an alien and explain X to me. Explain this particular subject to me. And you go, well, how do I do it without frame of reference? It's almost like I lack the frame of reference to explain my head to other people, which doesn't in any way mean that my situation or my head is unique. It certainly is not that. These emotions are common, I would imagine. The logical side of my brain tells me that. This is all stuff that people deal with all the time. And, right, where do I go to park? We'll go in there? Surely not. Could be. I'm going to end up hitting that bollard. Is this the parking area? I know it's a recruitment. This is a recruitment agency. Wow, okay. Here we are. Right, so back to my nonsensical ramblings. I can't remember what I was saying now. Yeah. It's all... What the hell is that on the side of that Tesco van? I think I am okay. I think what I need to realise is that I've been in this situation before. This is like a blip. And although it sucks a great deal at this moment in time, it will appreciably improve. Because this is the other thing as well. Unfortunately, one of the biggest concerns that I had when we found out we were all losing our jobs was the financial side of it. Now, I do have some savings, but I spent a lot of the past God knows how many years f***ing around being an alcoholic. Which means I kind of started building everything back up for myself quite recently, like relatively recently. And I'm by no means a rich person. However, my current situation affords me the opportunity to work for relatively low pay and yet still save a significant amount of money from that. Where am I going? I need to stop in a minute and pull up a map. So yeah, I can do that, and that's a very fortunate position to be in. What I've quickly found to be my main fear is that that small amount that I have managed to save is going to quickly disappear given no amount of adequate income. So obviously made benefits claims in the interim while waiting to find work. But that's nowhere near what my salary was. You when you're in work, sometimes you think, well, when I'm in work, they're I, not we. When I'm in work, I often feel like, oh God, I don't want to be here, or oh God, this is like, I'd much rather be at home doing nothing, or... And it is so funny how quickly you find that is not true. Don't get me wrong, having a day, maybe two, of lounging around, and especially with the weather being like it is, enjoying the sunshine and having that free time is fantastic. But, and there's always a but. And it's not a good but, it's a bad but. Having nothing to do with your time all the time is just horrid. I imagine there are people who would disagree, and I would disagree were I in employment. But I'm not, so maybe a little bit of despondency creeping into my overall mood, and just kind of like, what's the point? That's another thing that I've kind of noticed about myself recently as well. There's a lot of what's the point, not in any kind of like existential sense, like, oh, what's the point in life, don't talk to me about life. It's much more of a kind of like, why would I do this? Almost as if it's like, why would I do this? I know I'm probably not going to enjoy it. Or, for example, starting... Like, I installed the Mass Effect trilogy the other day because I thought, wow, you know, I got this sudden urge. I was like, I'm going to replay the Mass Effect trilogy because I enjoy it. I love it. It's brilliant. As soon as it had finished installing, in fact, the moment Steam finished installing it, downloading it, I just kind of went, but why would I do this? I'm like, but what part of me that wanted to do this 5 minutes ago is now staring at the installed game, resisting the urge to play it? I don't quite get that. That doesn't make sense when I try and sort of examine that. And I don't think that's particularly anything to do with the mood that I'm in, given what's just happened this week. That's something that I've noticed has been happening for a long time. Things I ostensibly enjoy and then resist doing for no reason. I isolate a lot. And this was something that was brought up as a big concern when I was in rehab. That, your tendency to... I'm going to sneeze. Your tendency to isolate is huge. Like, you are just the kind of person who, if you're not poked and prodded, you'll spend all your time by yourself. And I agree with that. I think that is a 100% accurate representation, observation. I am very much more comfortable spending my time by myself than I am around other people. But that's not always the smartest thing to do with your time, because, you know, you're eventually going to need to interact with people. And as much as I don't feel necessarily uncomfortable in most social situations, I have what I was listening to. When did he say? Krendor said this a long time ago. It was to do with social batteries. I have a very, very short life social battery. I can maintain like that sort of mask, that social front for a while. It's doable, and it does take a lot of effort. After a while, I'll still, if I have to, I'll still maintain it. But the effect of doing that is I just feel horrible, either later on that day or the next day. Like, I almost have to like hide for a bit. I just can't. It's so weird, because people have described me as like a very outgoing, confident, sociable person. And I think that's fantastic that I can actually put that across. I think that's great. I don't agree with it, only because I know what happens kind of behind the scenes. So the question is, what next? Well, in answer to that, I will give the short version. I do not know. At the moment, I am exploring the possibility of relocating. I don't want to be here for the rest of my life. That's too quick. Yeah, I don't want to be here for the rest of my life, but, and this is one of the other issues that I feel I have, starting again for me, I think I have backwards kind of mental attitude towards it. So most people well, no, I'm not going to say most people, because I don't know that's the case. I would imagine there would be people who would look at this situation and say, okay, you don't want to be where you're living, and you feel as though you need a change. Make that change. Do that. Or make steps to make that change. And I would agree. I would say that's exactly the way to do it. Make steps towards being where you want to be. That, in my head, is overridden by an almost blind panic about not being able to financially facilitate that. So, let me give you an example. Getting a job in another town, or another city, or a different part of the country. When I explore the aspects involved in that process, so you secure the job, you go for an interview, you then look for a house, you then move all your stuff. That's putting it simplistically in my head, but you know, those are the steps. That entire process, just my head falls apart, and I don't know why. It almost seems as though it's like, no, that can't be done. There is no reason why that can't be done. I've done it before. And I look back as to how I managed that mental process and sort of like deconstructing that process in my head to be better able to sort of deal with it. I don't know how I did it. It probably sounds dead stupid because it's like, well, you've just explained how you do it. I get stuck in a kind of thought loop, and then inevitably I'll end up applying for something that's close by again. Because I understand how people get stuck in situations sometimes, because everything to me seems insurmountable before I've started, and it dissuades me so much from moving outside of that kind of circle of, because you know, up until 3 years ago, what did I hit? I don't know what I hit. Oh well. Yeah, up until 3 years ago, that my situation that I had before everything just recently changed would have seemed impossible. Yet my brain has come to accept that as the standard, and actually to take some level of comfort from that. So how is it that I found myself in the same situation a little bit further on down the line, with experience that should soften the harshness of how I feel about that situation, yet finding myself going through the same thought process of like, oh god, this can't be done. Well, how do I do this? What do I do first? Do I get the job first? Do I move first? And then do I look for a job? It's a stupid indecision that just keeps going around and around in my head. And it's frustrating. It really is. So, to update on the situation, sort of generally, what's happened over the past couple of days in terms of jobs, I've had a couple of conversations with people. I'm not going to lie, most of which have been, this would be great if I A, could drive my own vehicle, and B, didn't live where I live. The transport routes out of this town are just not great. I mean, I can probably look on the bus routes that are available here, and possibly the train routes through to Manchester, because there is a pretty good link through to Manchester. But yeah, I've had to basically say no to a couple of things. It just sucks when you think like, that's like an opportunity can't afford to be saying no to. But such is stuff. Ooh, that was bad. That was a bad corner. Well, that was me taking a corner badly anyway. Kind of playing it by ear at the moment. Probably going to look for something similar to what I was doing before, and just work from there. It does feel a bit like starting again. Should be used to that by now. But like I say, I just have to have confidence that being in the same situation, I can do it. I need to have a bit of faith. Belief. Not faith. Belief.